Hello and welcome to another edition of our Wednesday webinar. We are thrilled that you are with us today, and you're going to love today's conversation because it's something that is definitely necessary for educators, but I think everyone has been in a situation where they'd have to navigate a difficult conversation. So without further ado, we are Grand Canyon University's Canyon Professional Development. And as I said, today's conversation is with a special guest, Dr. Vaughn Perot. She's going to be talking to us about navigating difficult conversations because Dr. Perot, I understand that you've navigated a few of these difficult conversations in your career. Tell us a little bit about what you've been up to and your expertise in this area.
Well, thank you for having me. Yeah, I've had multiple difficult conversations in a variety of aspects of my life. First of all, I raised a son. So you can start with that. And I'm married, so you can go there too. But I also spent a little over 20 years in corporate marketing. And so I would have to navigate difficult conversations within that realm. And then just under 20 years ago, I became a teacher. And I'm sure you can appreciate that difficult conversations are part of the role, whether it's with students, with coworkers, with administrators, or with parents. We're dealing with something that's very precious, which is a student, and therefore emotions get involved. And so difficult conversations are just part of the drill. The better we are at having them, the less daunting they will be.
Wow. Well, I can't wait to hear how you do it and try to glean a few of your tips and tools and tricks of the trade, not only in corporate marketing, but also as that classroom teacher. First of all, thank you for your service and thank you so much for continuing to work with our youth. And boy, I can't wait to hear some of these stories. So I guess it starts with conflict. Tell us a little bit.
Well, the thing is that most people prefer to avoid conflict. I mean, we're raised that we're really not supposed to have conflict. So even when a situation gets uncomfortable, it may seem best to just suck it up and be quiet and wait out the discomfort, kind of hoping that miraculously it will just disappear on its own. In fact, a recent survey found that 40% of people said they will put off having a difficult conversation for 6 months or more. Just hoping that it'll go away, and it won't. And the thing is that most people, or many people, they don't engage in a difficult conversation because, quite honestly, they don't know how to have one.
Oh my goodness. And so ultimately, conflict is not going away unless we deal with it, is what you're saying.
Exactly. So starting the tough conversation can feel really daunting. But as you said, conflict is not inherently bad. Difficult conversations are just part of working with other human beings. And reaching an understanding is often the first step toward creating a better environment for everybody. Meanwhile, avoiding the conflict, that's what can cause issues to grow and solidify and even polarize you so that now you're not dealing with that person at all. That can create a really toxic environment for everyone.
Well, we don't want toxicity, that is for sure. And I can only imagine in the classroom that can be even more challenging. Indeed. So what do we do?
Well, of course, the best way to deal with a misunderstanding is don't have one in the first place.
Oh yeah, like that's human. That doesn't even sound human, does it?
Exactly. What I would really recommend, what I try to do, is make sure that no one is ever surprised. Be proactive and be transparent. So many difficult conversations are avoided or unnecessary because there was excellent communication beforehand. If you try and create a team with parents and students and peers as early in the relationship as you can, it pays dividends. I refer to it as creating a savings account where I make the first deposit. So for example, as a teacher, I get my classroom roster a few days before the students actually show up. And I take the time from home to call each home of each student and simply introduce myself and say, I'm looking forward to getting to know your student in my class this year. It literally can be just a 30, 60-second conversation. But so many parents have said to me, you're the first teacher who's ever done that.
Wow.
And sometimes they'll want to share that, little Johnny's story or whatever. But the beauty of it is 3 months later, Johnny comes home and says, gosh, that Dr. Perot. And mom says, wait a minute, is that nice lady that called here a few months ago? And she's already on my team. The thing is that by that point, I've already established with her that she and I both want the same thing. We want Johnny to have a positive experience in my class. And then, so by creating that team and being proactive about it, then Johnny has the option of either fighting both of us or joining the team. Usually they'll just join the team.
I would think so. So what you're basically saying is kind of similar to the medical industry or the healthcare industry. Maybe if you prevent by going to the gym and eating right, that sort of thing, then maybe you're not going to have that, extra cholesterol number, et cetera. So you
exactly. And technology has been our friend with this, because we can have a website, we can have a Google Classroom, we can communicate in so many ways that creates that team.
That is fabulous. And I love what you say, the dividends pay off. So you've got an investment up front, but boy, it's going to save you some time in the long run.
Yeah, and a lot of hassle.
Really great advice.
Thank you.
I like to win. Why are you telling me not to try?
No, no matter how transparent we are, sometimes we have to have a difficult conversation. We just don't see eye to eye on something. An event happens and we need to address it. As leaders, teachers need to handle difficult conversations really productively. And the key to that is understanding that the foundation is the solution. So you cannot walk in trying to win, because if you're trying to win, the other person has to lose. And nobody wants to lose, so they will fight against you. If, on the other hand, you aim for understanding, that you're both actually seeking the same objective, Johnny being successful in your class, or a resolution to this problem so that you can work well together, and nobody won and nobody lost, but by doing that, you both end up winning. That sounds trite, but it actually works. If you don't walk in saying, dang it, I'm going to win, and they're going to see that I was right, I promise you, you will never win that conversation. Because even if you win that battle, you'll lose the war in the relationship.
Now you're really reminding me of my husband and I sometimes. I just tell me I'm right, but
Yeah.
it's happened, it's like, well, if neither one of us are right, we reach a compromise and we can move forward in what we're dealing with. So really, really great tip, I have to say. Thank you for that one. I don't know if I'm as good at it as I want to be. I'm going to need to take your class, but here we go.
Well, like everything, it takes practice.
It takes practice. Very, very good point there. So speaking of points, how do we continue? How do we take this practice and make it a reality so that we can navigate these difficult conversations when we have to?
Okay, well, there's 3 main points. Number 1 is preparing for the conversation. Remember, the goal is to create that team. And so to create an era of understanding, if you will, often we go into a tough conversation with the desired outcome in mind. And when an issue weighs on you, it's normal to just kind of envision the solution that means you were right, and you don't give any consideration to the other person. It's critical to remember these conversations have to be a dialogue, not a monologue. You are not lecturing a child. You are speaking to someone else trying to create understanding. So self-reflection and empathy are really important. Reflecting on your own role in the dilemma can really help. For example, I had a new teacher put next door to me several years ago, and his classroom was so loud that it was disrupting mine. So of course I thought, I'm going to go address that with him. I'm going to tell him to knock it off, and he's going to stop. Thankfully, knowing this stuff that I did, I thought, wait a minute, I wonder what his perspective is. And so I tried to think, why would he be doing what he's doing? So instead, I walked over to him and said, I've been doing this for a long time. And I know that sometimes classroom management can be really difficult. How's yours going?
That's
Well,
very strategic.
yeah, well, then he said, oh my gosh, I'm really struggling. The kids are so loud. And we were able to talk out some strategies that I had used successfully. He walked away feeling like I had helped him instead of like I was some scolding parent who was telling him he was doing his job wrong. And we created a team. And that was the whole point. You need to have a respectful and intentional conversation. And to do that, you need to prepare for it by taking a step back, checking your emotions. And the question I always ask myself is, I wonder how they see this issue. And if I can try and put myself in their shoes, that really helps.
I love that. You have here prepare. And my brain also goes to what you said, taking a step back, perspective. So
yes,
I'm just going to use the P there, the prepare and have the perspective of the other person in your preparation, so that when you go in and you're like, where are they coming from? And that's just good advice for your students as well. To think about how your students are feeling on a particular day, and maybe that's why the conversation doesn't start out really well. What is their perspective? That's priceless. Okay, so that's point number one. Point two,
right? Point number two, is when you actually get into the conversation. Let's say that it doesn't go as smoothly as my conversation did with my peer that was a few minutes in the hall. And we need to have a more formal, we're going to meet, we're going to walk through this. Start the conversation by stating the purpose, and make sure that you say, the purpose is that I want to understand your point of view. And then I would like to share my own. For example, a one-on-one conversation with a parent might go something like this. I'd like to talk to you about your son's experience in my classroom. I know from prior experiences and conversations that you and I see things a little bit differently. You're concerned that I haven't taken into account the challenges he's experiencing outside the classroom. And for my part, I'm struggling to give him the attention he needs. Well, I'm still teaching the other students in my class. Now, what I'd like to do is hear your thoughts on this, and I'd like to share mine. And then let's see if we can come up with some ideas on how to improve the experience for your son. That last part is the key. That's creating the team. The whole point of this is to improve the experience for your son, not for me to win or you to be wrong. It's why are we both here? We both want the same thing. It's so important to give the floor to them first, because if you start lecturing or telling them this is what's going on here, they will fight against you. And you would do the same thing. It's not a character flaw on their part. They feel like they're being pushed against, so they're going to push back. So if you just turn the floor over to them, but state up front, I want to listen to you. I want to understand your view, but then I'd like to share my own.
Wow, that's genius. Can you just send that over to me? Because I just need to practice that statement. The way in which you started that conversation, I felt there's like the person on the other side couldn't feel defensive. And that's usually what happens, right? Like we feel defensive, like, oh my gosh, I'm going to get yelled at, or, I'm going to gear up to go into this conversation with the teacher.
Yeah, or I'm here to protect my child.
Yeah. Wow. That's beautiful. So stating the purpose, understanding the other person's view, and then sharing your own meaning. I want to share my thoughts too. I love that too, because oftentimes teachers will say, okay, well, I'll just take it from the parents since the parent is in charge here.
Yeah, but you didn't solve anything.
Right.
So that's the point. The next thing is that you need to listen and show respect. That sounds so obvious. It's not. So as I said, you turn the floor over to them. But what you have to remember is hearing is passive, but listening is active. And so often we aren't really listening. We think to ourselves, I know what you're going to say, or we're already planning our response when the person is talking. And so often you will hear people say, I don't feel heard. I didn't get to finish my thought. I didn't get to give an example, whatever the case might be. So show respect and validate their feelings. Trying to tell someone that their feelings are invalid will make them continue to fight against you and view you as their opponent. You shouldn't feel like that is as ridiculous as ordering someone to calm down. Has anyone ever calmed down because they were ordered to? I mean, it's ludicrous. I've used that with my own son. You need to calm down. I'm like, oh gosh, did I really just say that?
But it's so popular. I've said it to my own child, and you're
Sure.
absolutely right. They never calm down. If somebody tells me to calm down, I get fired up. So
No, of course not. And that's frustrating for somebody to say you need to calm down or your feelings aren't valid. That's the exact same thing as saying you're wrong, you lose. And
wow.
now we're back to the problem.
Oh my gosh. And I might also say that when you said that listening to understand is very different than listening to respond. And
Yes.
most of us listen to respond, and we don't listen to understand when especially when we're up against a wall. So I love the earlier tips that you shared to allow your
Mhm.
parent to not feel like they're up against the wall, and then focusing on the behavior is just excellent, excellent advice. Wow. Okay.
Well, and that's the point is, like I said, it sounds like it's so obvious, but it's really not. It's critical to listen. Don't just stop talking. Those are different things. And let them truly exhaust their thoughts. You can even encourage them by saying, I'm really interested in that. Can you tell me more?
Oh, I like
Make
that.
sure that they said all they wanted to say. And when they see that you're not fighting against them, that will go a lot quicker than you think. Whereas if you fight against them, they'll go on for hours. You know?
Especially when it comes to their own children, right?
Exactly. So then when it is your turn and they've said their piece, all of it, make sure that you respond, don't react. So you want to listen intently, make sure you understood them. And then if you've heard something that differs from your point of view, you could say, for example, may I offer another perspective? No one will ever say no to that.
That's a good way to say that.
Yeah. And then you can give very specific examples, not conclusions, examples. So you don't say, well, it's just a fact that your son is disruptive, because they will fight against you on that. Offer instead an example. Here's an example of what's been challenging to me. Make sure you've got your facts ready. I have sat in meetings where teachers have said to upset parents, well, your daughter goes to the bathroom constantly. That's not real, it's not truthful, and it's not factual. So instead, if you could say, well, here's an example of what's been challenging for me. In the first 21 days of the school year, your daughter's left my class to use the restroom 11 times.
That's a lot.
That is, yeah, that is powerful, it's impactful, and it's not emotional. It's just a fact. But you had to have your facts ready when you were preparing for the meeting. And that draws you back into that partnership that's not an adversarial relationship. And the thing is that then you can keep checking, do they truly understand? Because as much as we can talk about that it's important for us to listen, sometimes they won't, or they just can't right now because they're really upset. So you do need to ensure that they are understanding why this is a problem. Why are we having this meeting?
And it goes back to that first piece of what you said, prepare. I really appreciate that. So you really do need to prepare before you get into this meeting, because as you say, respond, don't react, but we all know that it's a little harder to not react. I'll put it that way.
I teach psychology. And so I will tell you that our instincts are to freeze, to flee, or to fight. And none of those will work. Okay. You don't get to run away and just not show up for the parent meeting. You don't get to leave your classroom because the student is annoying you, and fighting them is what we're trying to avoid. So whatever you need to do to control your emotions, you need to do it. There is that saying, to raise justifiable concerns in an unjustifiable manner just creates more problems. They're not even hearing what you're saying. They're listening to how you say it.
Yep.
So if you need to take a day or 3, do it to make sure that your emotions are in line. And then remember, this is not about you. And actually, it's not about the student or the parent. It's about the behavior.
Mhm.
The behavior is what needs to change. The thing is, though, that as a mother, if somebody said something about my child, I feel like I'm defending my child. What we need to remind them is, no, it's not your child, it's the behavior.
I
The
love that.
behavior we can change.
So with that said, focus on the future.
Yes.
Focus after with the behavior we can change. Let's focus on getting this problem solved.
Right. And it's not about, have I convinced you what a terrible student your child is or anything like that, or that he's a brat or anything. It's, what do we do going forward? Because remember, we're a team here and we want happy students. We want happy parents. We want kids who are learning in our classrooms. We want happy peers and bosses. So talk about what's going to be different in the future. Now, depending on the nature of the conversation, maybe you need to put a procedure in place. Maybe you need to make a commitment that we're going to do it differently next time. Share some possible solutions. Listen to them. Ask them, what do you think would work with this? Even if you already have an end goal in mind, coming to the solution has to be a joint effort. You may believe you have the right solution, you have the right fix. If you don't get their buy-in, it's pointless. So if you can reach an understanding and a plan that works for both of you, great if they can feel like they're the ones that came up with the solution.
That's the trick. Make it their idea.
Make it their idea.
Their idea.
Yep. So you might want to figure out a way also, if something like this should happen again, how are we going to address this so that it doesn't become such a big deal? You could say, in the future, if something like this happens, I'd really appreciate it if you would, whatever, pick up the phone before you go to the school board meeting, or, whatever the case might be. You might need to check up and say, you know what, let's touch base again a month from now and see how it's going. The thing is, you're reiterating this idea of a team, that I will invest my time. I will follow up with you a month from now to see if he is being more successful in my class and what's the feedback you're getting at home from this student. So that understanding and being the team that you both actually want the same thing is critically important.
I love it. So we've got the team effort, and now a tool. Tell us a little bit.
The tools I just think they're really fun. Probably because I'm a psychology geek. So I think it's a blast.
Everybody likes psychology because we all like to analyze ourselves. So
yes, and each other.
About the tool.
There are lots of these tools out there. I am not pegging one over the other. There's the Keirsey temperament, there's the Myers-Briggs, there's lots of these different personality type tests out there. They're for free, available online. I happen to mention those two, but again, I'm not sponsoring them or anything. I'm just saying those are 2 examples.
That's great. And you know what? We will put those links into the show notes for y'all. So you can check those out after you listen to this awesome podcast over this YouTube video over and over again.
Anyone who's ever spoken persuasively or taught English or taught debate will tell you there's 3 different approaches to be persuasive. Okay. You either appeal to someone's ethics, their logic, or their emotion. So if you think about your 2 parents, if you needed a favor, would you use the same argument with your mom that you would for your dad?
Definitely not.
Often people will say no because they know, oh gosh, that's not going to work with them. My parents were dramatically different people. And so I would have gone emotional with my mom and logical with my dad, so these temperament sorters or personality tests, first of all, it's fun to take it yourself so that you know which type you fall into. But then I usually try to use little cues to see if I can get to know my audience before the difficult conversation. Let's say it's a parent I've never met and they are upset and they want to meet. And I look down and I see this person works as an accountant.
Wow, now
I
you're
can
getting
guess
it.
already what's
Okay.
going to work with him. Okay.
Uh-huh.
So when you get your results, you'll get 4 letters. Disregard the first one and the fourth one for this discussion. And we're just going to focus on the 2 in the middle. So there's 4 possible outcomes. You could result in being an ST. That means a sensing thinker. Now, the character type for them, they are the supervisor or the inspector. Their self-image is I am respectable and I'm reliable. And what's going to work with these people is logic. If you go in and say something emotional, not only will they not respond well, they might find it annoying.
Okay, and then our
And the next ones are SFs, that's sensing feelers. They are performers, providers, protectors. They see themselves as artistic and adaptable. What is interesting to me is logic is what works with them too, because they are still the sensors. They're sensory. They want to see facts and data. So give them the numbers, give them the details, give them the facts, and they will respond more favorably.
Fascinating. Okay.
Then we've got the NTs, intuitive thinkers. They're the masterminds and the architects. They see themselves as disciplined and autonomous. And I've put pictures up of rather famous people who are these personality types. What works with them is ethics. If you can say this is the right thing to do, they will respond much better than all of the statistics in the world. They don't care about that. They care that it's a morally right thing.
Wow.
And then finally, we have the NFs. They are the intuitive feelers. They are teachers, counselors, healers. They see themselves as benevolent and empathetic. And what works with them is emotion. You could say to them, yes, Susie has left my classroom 11 times to use the ladies' room in the first 21 days of school. Can you appreciate how disrespectful that feels?
Ooh, I see. You said feels. I like it.
Yes. And as soon as you changed it from the 11 times out of 21, that's logic. But you said, can you appreciate how disrespectful that feels? Now I'm speaking to the NF, and they're going to understand and respond favorably. Instead of running through a bunch of numbers, they don't care, and they're not going to respond to that. So any tips that you can use to try and guess, I wonder what kind of a personality type I'm dealing with here, and target your presentation of your perspective along those lines, you'll be much more likely to be successful.
Wow, that is just awesome information. And in my head, I'm thinking, gosh, wouldn't it be fun to have kind of a parent night and have them take a personality test? That I'm sure they'd love it.
Well, I'll tell you what, if the viewers who are seeing this, if they will come to our in-person seminars, we actually role play with a bunch of different character types of coworkers and parents and students. They're almost caricatures, of people, but trust me when I tell you, they all were based on real people. And it's really fun to get to play. How would I approach this issue with that type of person?
Oh, that is just genius. Wow. We could go on and on. Unfortunately, we're running out of time, but I absolutely appreciate all of the great advice, Dr. Perot. And I know that you are awesome. I love this final shot.
I love kitties.
And this is who you are. You're just absolutely awesome. Thank you very much for sharing with us all of your tips and your tricks. And trust us, folks, we will be able to share with you in our social media and also in our YouTube show notes. We'll make sure to share with you all of this information that Dr. Perot has left us today. We want to say a special thank you to Dr. Perot. Hopefully we'll have her back on at another Wednesday webinar. She can talk to us even more about those thinkers and feelers and intuitive emotional, you know where I'm going with that.
Mhm.
I just want to say thank you. Subscribe for more free PD at our channel. And until next time, it's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much for having me.
Take care.
Bye-bye.